So after doing some testing yesterday with Adam, he primarily said that I needed to start fixing the bugs that were happening in the game and get some of it finalised. So the first one was the problem with the rock throw, which was very inconsistent, as you can see by the first clip. In when it moves off to the right, it should just move off to the right normally, but sometimes goes down the scene, sometimes goes to the right. So I decided to change this script to, instead of using an add force, just changing the velocity of the rock. So when you press the button, it increases the velocity of the rock in the x-axis to the right. And I went through a bit of testing with this and found about 25 F to be the right float like speed to use on this. And through like several times of testing, I found that this had gotten the rock working. So that was the first bug fix for me, and that was good. All good. So the second bug that I encountered during building the first scene with all the assets was the ladders in the scene, which the middle one, so the top one, sometimes you didn't actually got the ladder. It would take a few tries, like moving in and out between them, to actually get the the booleans to set off to say that you can climb up the ladder. And the bottom one, which takes you to the game floor, sometimes you just fall down it instead of actually climbing down the ladder as you should normally. So this was something I had to fix. So I just deleted the one you fall down and duplicated the other, because that worked probably for climbing down, and just moved it over just to see if that worked, which it did. And then what I did next was the sizes of the box colliders that acted as the ladders. I just made them smaller, so the time between the player coming out of the first ladder onto the second ladder was smaller, which gave the time to the script to work in terms of overlaying the booleans, which I think was what the problem, that it went too far into it. They were too close, so it just didn't register. Like, it wasn't enough time to register, and made it a bit faulty. So I made the box colliders smaller and went through some testing and found that this worked for ladders. So all the bugs in that had been fixed. Now that I've had the bugs fixed in the first scene, it was time to create an end game for it to get the scene finalised. I've already had the level 1 start done for when the player enters the game. So now I'd already done a level 2 end. So I just used the template for that. Created some transforms for where the bird is, so the camera can follow that, and a place for the gate, so the camera shows when that's rising, to show that the player can progress. So I just used a similar vector 3 follows and lerping with asked when the rock hit the tree. It then followed the bird towards the house, and then delayed for a few seconds. So because later on, when the animations for the villager being in there can play, and then it moves towards the gate, which instead of actually following the gate, I made a transform, because the gate is off to the right hand side of the screen, so it doesn't show any of the grey areas. And then after a few seconds of showing that, it goes back to the player, and then they can carry on with that. So the first problem I encountered was following the bird, as it took too long to move through once it stopped following the player, and there was a few bugs there with where that camera actually followed. So I just reused the camera point, which showed in the start of the scene, so the camera moved back towards that again, which made it a bit smoother, looked better, and showed more of the event happening. And then after the testing, I had to go through the timers. So I created a few timers, so to just delay the camera following, and had to work on the if statements and the bools, and say I like to stable the script, the movement script, the animation script, and the camera follow script when the lerpings were following in the end game. And then after a lot of fiddling around with this was a bit of a difficulty getting that right, which took some time, probably about half an hour or so, just fiddling about with it, getting it correct. And then once I'd done that, the camera follow animations and move script carry on again, and I got that working with not showing the gracing at the top, so it ensured the camera didn't follow back up towards the player and then show where there wasn't any artwork. So that took some time fiddling around with them, getting all those correct. And so that was, and then that got me to level 1 end of the game. But that's just for now. So once, so I can finish this off and get some do some testing for it. But then later on, I'll have to add in the actual sprites for the gate. And the animation for that, for it going up, because currently it's just a blue square, which doesn't look very good. And there will be some obviously voice lines for the person opening the gate, and obviously sound effects as well. But in terms of the camera movements and all the interactions, this first tutorial is finalised, so I can move on to then implementing the artwork on the later levels. Good.